Tonight, the Attorney General's office fights off NDC claims of political intimidation, insisting the opposition party's national chairman will be dealt with according to law.
Some of these fools of jarrism should stop.
It is just political intimidation.
If the national chairman of the ruling party commits an offense, he ought to be tried. Simplicity.
We'll hear from the AG's office as scores of NDC supporters mass up at High Court in support of their national chairman, who is being prosecuted for allegedly conspiring to cause harm and assault of a public officer.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion, is also brought to you by Gasem Cement, the nation builder. Vodafone, the future is exciting, ready, and nationwide health insurance, your healthcare family. But they came in their hundreds, angered by the Attorney General's decision to prosecute their national chairman, Samuel Fosuampofo. They accused the AG of political intimidation and witch hunt. But the AG's office is tonight fighting back, justifying the decision to prosecute NDC national chairman Samuel Fosuampofo. Now, the Deputy Attorney General, Joseph Kpenka Diop, insists all Ghanaians are subject to laws and must be dealt with once they breach them. Now, Ms. Ampofo, NDC Deputy Director of Communications Kweku Boahen, were today arraigned on charges including conspiracy to commit crime. Their lawyers have accused the AG of abusing her prosecutorial powers. Now, court correspondent Joseph Akable has the rest of the story.
I don't see the reason why this matter should even come to the court in the first place. For me, it is as if the CID have no work to do.
I share the same because look at what happened at SYZ recently about Owusu Bempah. Owusu Bempah should have called by now.
Top NDC members, including flag bearer John Dramani Mahama and many supporters, were at the law court complex to support Mr. Ampofo, who is facing charges of conspiracy to cause harm and 2 counts of assault of a public officer. The NDC's Deputy Communications Director Kweku Boahen is also facing a charge of conspiracy to cause harm. The two pleaded not guilty, with their lawyers making an application for bail. Justice Samuel Osiedu granted them bail to the tune of 100,000 cedis with one surety. Lawyers for the two, however, say the AG is abusing their prosecutorial powers. Eddie Tamako represents Mr. Boahen.
A little investigation will show Kweku Boahen was nowhere at the NDC headquarters. So how in God's name would you proceed on the basis of this faulty assumption, proceed to process him for court? And I want to beg the learned Attorney General that some of these fools of jarrism should stop. It is a very noble office of the Attorney General.
It is just political intimidation. I am not sure it will end anywhere, because they themselves were not confident about the charges they were talking about. So we think that this is intimidation, but this is the beginning of the fall of the Nana Akufo-Addo's government.
The AG's office disagrees.
But it's not for them at this stage, for them to have premature ejaculation. So we are not actually going to discuss the merits of the matter. But we are assuring you that we made a judgment. And that judgment was based on looking at the entire facts and circumstances of the matter before arriving at the charges that we have preferred against the accused persons. And we are confident of the fact that we will be able to provide evidence to back the charges that we have actually leveled against. If the national chairman of the ruling party commits an offense, he ought to be tried. Simplicity. No one is above the law. And the Constitution itself is very clear on this matter, that none of us is above the law. Okay? And so any person who falls foul of the law is made to face the law. If at the end of the day the court finds you guilty or acquits you, that's the decision of the court.
Joseph Akablase with me in the studio. Joseph, what are the facts of the case as presented by the AG to the court today?
The Attorney General first gave a bit of background about the by-election that took place and the fact that an MP had passed on, which made it necessary for a by-election to be held. She went on to say that on 3rd February 2019, Mr. Ampofo met some persons described as communication team members at the NDC's headquarters. She said that on February 27, the CID obtained a copy of an audio recording of the said meeting, which had gone viral. She says in the audio, Mr. Ampofo and Kweku Boyne and others are heard talking about a plot to perpetuate electoral violence and other crimes against public officers. In fact, she said that the EC chair, there was a threat that the EC chair will be molested and the Peace Council chair should be insulted as well. And he says Kweku Boyne granted a radio interview subsequently confirming the meeting, adding that the audio was a reflection of what transpired. And she made a point that this is the basis for which the individuals have been brought to court.
Okay, so particularly with Kweku Boyne, that's where the curiosity is, because Kweku Boyne's lawyer, Eduji Tamaklo, in an interview with you was absolutely categorical that this last point that the Attorney General makes to the court can be true because Kweku Boyne wasn't anywhere close to that meeting.
So he makes a number of issues in that regard. The first point he raises is that on the 3rd February that the AG makes reference to that the meeting had taken place, he says he was not at the NDC's headquarters. He goes on to make the point that I had asked him directly that about that interview that Mr. Boyne had granted, in which he confirmed the content of the audio being a reflection of the meeting which the AG had made reference to, and he said that he never admitted to being at any meeting. Neither did he admit that the audio reflected what transpired at the meeting.
He never did. He never did. The AG herself did not. She herself never listened to that interview. In fact, it was in your studio. He never. No. And that is where we need to be very clear. Even a little investigation by you, the Attorney General, should show that it could not have been possible that the man was there. Just check his record in Kumasi on the 3rd day of February. And that is why we have indicated that we are going to put up the defense of alibi. And let's see how it proceeds. Please, this is a very serious republic. Look, we want peace. We want calmness for all the political actors in this country. So we'll continue to engage the democratic space so that our people, the best of ideas, would always carry the day. But when you want to prosecute political figures associated with the opposition just to give a certain, encouragement to your base, I mean, with the greatest respect, this is a very serious offense. Please, the Republic, look, I am saying, and I know professional policemen, all you just have to do is just to trace Kweku Boyne, his movements on the 3rd day of February, and it will be clear that the fact put before the court cannot be true. How do you charge the first accused of having conspired with a man who was not present? Does it not speak well of the nature of the charges itself? How can I conspire with somebody who was never present? At what time was that agreement? In fact, the word conspiracy is from the Latin word conspira, to breathe together. At what point was that done? Please.
What's the risk concerned about the fact that there's no complainant in this particular case? What does that mean?
The facts read in court. Who is the complainant? Who is the complainant? Now you come to court and say the EC chairperson will be molested. Please, with the greatest respect to the occupant of the office of the Attorney General, this is not how it is done. This office has been occupied by people before. With the greatest respect, look, this country belongs to all of us. There is no second-class citizen in this country. And let us not make anybody one of such.
So, in that conversation with you, he references an interview that rightly was done on one of our sister stations, which is Empire FM.
Yes.
And I'm guessing
the AG, while presenting the facts of the case, had made reference to it. So when I was engaging him, he made the point that the AG got it wrong because he was not at the NDC headquarters on a set date. So I sought to suggest to him that, how about the point about that interview which he had granted and said that he was at a meeting and that those were the matters that transpired at the meeting. He said that did not happen. No, he never said that. He never said that.
Okay, so we got that clip of Mr. Kwaku Boahene speaking on Asempa FM. Listen to what he exactly said.
Ibia okay, Ibia party for na editum party for no so ninja. One the party for ni
The party accepts all what he said. Party members are happy about it. He met his party members. They are happy about his utterances. That is why they clapped at a point. It was a meeting of our communications team. We meet once every week. Bad people joined the meeting and recorded the discussion. Canadian Japan made portions of the audio available last week. What you hear today is the rest of them. This will not discourage us from talking about the bad things happening in government. It's a communication meeting with myself, Sami Jemfi, and Akugan as leaders. We meet all our communicators to strategize our security and communication. Honorable Fusampofo joined us to motivate us. That is why you heard people clapping. Because we are happy. If someone doesn't understand and want to bend the sea, they should go ahead.
So that is Kwaku Boahene, and listen closely to the question. The presenter asked him twice. Meeting, in other words, meeting. Were you at this meeting? The second time the presenter asked, meeting, were you there? His response was, this is a meeting that myself and Sami Jemfi control, are the leaders of. Yeah, Dano. Okay, exactly. Are the leaders of. That was his response. I don't know if you can interpret that to mean I was at the meeting. Because I said meeting, a meeting, which means, as you said, you understand it better than I do. This is a meeting that myself and Sami Jemfi are leaders of. Does that mean that he was there?
So I asked a direct question about this point, about his presence at the meeting to the Deputy Attorney General. And he makes the point that once that issue comes up in terms of the trial proper, the AG's office will respond appropriately to it. And we are confident of the fact that we will be able to provide evidence to back the charges that we have actually leveled against them. In terms of the facts presented to the court, I mean, we heard the AG say that it was a communications team meeting. Any special reason why only 2 individuals are before the court? Well, it is very clear that if you look at Article 19, it is very clear that we have freedom of speech and etc. But all those ones are subject to laws in our democratic dispensation. And so you can go to communicate anywhere, you can sit anywhere, but you cannot plan to commit a crime or a series of crimes and be made to get away with it under the guise of freedom of speech. And so that particular bit you are talking about, which was actually canvassed by counsel for the other side, we're going to look at it. And as I have indicated, we are not here to persecute anybody. As an Attorney General, she has made a judgment, and we are here to ensure that we prove the charges that have been leveled vis-a-vis the facts that we actually have and the pieces of evidence that we are going to adduce at the trial. Is government not concerned about the perception prosecuting this case will create? I mean, this is the leader of the largest opposing party, your opponent in politics. Then it means that what you are saying is that we should start amending our constitution to create a set of laws for the underprivileged and a set of laws for the privileged. Maybe that's what you are saying. And I don't think that's the type of nation we want to build. If the national chairman of the ruling party commits an offense, he ought to be tried. Simplicity. No one is above the law. And the Constitution itself is very clear on this matter, that none of us is above the law. Okay? And so any person who falls foul of the law is made to face the law. If at the end of the day, the court finds you guilty or acquits you, that's the decision of the court. For us, we are not judging any matter, and we will never judge any matter before the judge passes judgment, because we are not competent to pass judgment on anything. It is the judge. And as I have indicated, no person in this country is above the law, and we are going to ensure that anything that is done is in compliance with the laws of the land. The second accused person well, that one will be decided in evidence. The evidence of the case that we are going to actually adumbrate or adduce will prove whether or not he was in the meeting. And whatever alibi they want to file, we are not contesting anything. But when it comes, we shall mount a defense to that effect. We are grateful.
So what happens now?
So we have to go back on May 6th, but before then they are supposed to, the AG's office is supposed to make sure that they hand documents and evidence, including the recordings, to them before the trial commences. But the lawyers, the defense lawyers, had opportunities to make some opening statements. Mr. Ampofo's lawyer, Tony, later said that the AG is abusing prosecutorial powers, and at the appropriate time they will show that. He makes the point again that it's important for the court to grant him bail because he's the leader of the largest opposition party. He's the chairman. He's going to be available. The election season is heating up, and he's required to be in the country as part of his duties. And the court agreed with that and proceeded to grant him bail. Same with Mr. Kwekubwai.
Okay, thank you very much, Joseph. Let's speak to a member of the legal team for the NDC national chairman, Victor Dawudu, is on the line with us. So, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Evans, good evening, and it's a pleasure talking to you.
This is clearly a case of the law working, is it not?
So far as the mandate has been given to Attorney General to initiate criminal proceedings under Article 88, she decides to put any matter, which is criminal matter, before the court. So that is her judgment and decision, that this is a matter that should go to court.
Okay, so it's gone to court, but I've heard today some of your team members in as part of the group of lawyers representing make several accusations, including one, Attorney General is abusing her prosecutorial powers. Even the party has gone further to say that this is a case of political intimidation. How so, when the man is before a court of competent jurisdiction?
Yes, it is. I believe that this is a matter which, when you look at the matter and the genesis of the matter, the tape that we listened in the media, and what was played for us when we went to the police as the evidence, if that is the only evidence of which this whole case hinges, then it goes for the judgment that was formed by the defense is that if what we heard was what he actually said, and he actually said, then that means that there's nothing criminal in it, but it may raise some few security concerns, which is legitimate. That is how we see. But the Attorney General and the prosecution has a different view of it, and they think that it has some criminal intentions and elements in it. So that's why it's been put before the court. So far as it's before a competent court of jurisdiction, I think our only duty is to make sure that we put up a good defense, a very forceful one, and to meet them and be able for them to prove beyond reasonable doubt that, yes, indeed, what we've been charged with, yes, we had the intention and we have committed as such.
Okay, so from what you say, your main submission is that this is a court case and you can prove it in court, and yet we've seen this turn into a. Can you hear me, sir? Appears we've lost him there. That's Dawodu there. We'll try and get him back and see if we can get a sense of. We've seen the massing of people at the court today. We've also seen party elements and leaders making several pronouncements. In fact, the former president himself was there at this particular event, and not event, the court case himself to lend his support. But accusations already. Yesterday there was a statement from the party alleging that this is part of a plan to intimidate the opposition. The party seem to have taken a strong position that this has a lot to do with politics. I want to read to you a statement that was signed and issued by John Sesedi Nketia, and it says here that the National Democratic Congress has taken note of the scheduled commencement of the trial of our national chairman. So we wish to condemn in no uncertain terms the politically motivated persecution of our officials, cynically disguised as lawful prosecution. The NDC finds it curious that the Chief Justice, having created the divisions for the High Court with fully constituted criminal division, the case of our national chairman will be assigned to a justice at the commercial division of the High Court. We hope there is no sinister motive behind it. We are aware that the frivolous, trumped up, and illogical charges brought against our officials form part of a grand scheme by an increasingly intolerant and vindictive Nana Akufo-Addo to gag the political opposition. He says that the party says Mr. Akufo-Addo is under this misguided belief that this partisan prosecution will divert attention from his dismal display in government and maladministration that is fast driving Ghana into a ditch. He says fully aware that he cannot fulfill the legion of utopian campaign promises made to Ghanaians. The president has devised a scheme to use malicious prosecutions of NDC functionaries to carry favor with the electorate. And then they conclude by stating that we are unwilling to cede an inch of Ghana's political space to a leader whose only approach to dissent is persecution. That is the NDC's position. But how do you reconcile that with what the lawyers themselves have said today, that they will prove their case in court? Thankfully, Mr. Dawodu is back on the line. Hello, Mr. Dawodu, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, Evans, I can hear you.
Are you one of those who side with the party's position that this is persecution?
Yes, Evans, this is a party, and I believe that the General Secretary knows much about party and its workings. He knows much and knows what he's talking about. But we, as lawyers, are looking at the legal and what we have to do. We are also not naive as lawyers that we have political machinations when it comes. When there are issues, we are purely legal, and there are some that has political undercurrent. People know, and people can see in between the lines. But for us as lawyers, we would look at what exactly is before the court, and we will do that. I'm sure the politicians will look at the political complications and read in between the lines. That's the position that the party has taken. And the General Secretary and the top echelon of the party knows what is going on and understands it.
Explain this to me. What are his bail conditions? Because we understand that he was granted bail today. What are his bail conditions? Do we know?
Yes, he was granted a bail in the sum of 100,000 with one surety. That is for each of them, 100,000 each. Now that means that any person who will stand as surety for him, if they don't see the chairman coming to stand trial, that person will be asked to pay that amount. So it is a bond, it is a contract that you have with the state. So the person has entered into a contract with the state that if the chairman Ofosu Ampofo and Kokubuahim don't come to court, they, on their own volition, are willing and ready to pay 100,000 for that.
Normally, what I know will happen in this case is that he will have to surrender his traveling documents. Has he done so, or was he required to do so?
No. I think we made it clear to the court that he's not a flight risk. That he's always in the country, and the nature of his duties requires him to be here. He has both duties as national duties and that of the party. So he's not a flight risk, and we don't think that he will travel or go anywhere, or he'll become a fugitive running away from justice.
And that's Dawodu. Thank you for your time. That's Victor Dawodu. He's a member of the legal team for the national chairman of the NDC. Thankfully, we've just been joined on the telephone line by the deputy general secretary of the NDC, Mr. Tokuno. Mr. Tokuno, thank you for your time here on Top Story. I've just been reading out your statement that you issued last night, but also this today in court. Aspects of it has been reiterated by the party general secretary and others, essentially stating that the trial of the national chairman amounts to persecution, and this is political intimidation. How so, when the man is before a court of competent jurisdiction?
Evans, particularly so because if you look at how this government has ignored much more critical criminal issues and has sought not to even encourage the police service to investigate further, criminal acts involving, crime, the loss of life, and the maiming of others, and have decided to focus on this state.
Are you suggesting, Mr. Tokuno, that some of Usanko's persecution will only be justified if the MPP prosecutes every other case that you raise hell about?
Particularly when we have indicated that this tape is doctored, one would have thought that the more critical and pressing criminal issues that are pending investigation, the police service will at least pay some critical attention to those investigations, and the government will show some interest in those investigations, especially when in the history of this country's politics, we have had tapes upon tapes upon tapes, some of which even included and involved the current sitting president, who had declared a whole elections or die be die, and declared that if the elections do not go in their favor, they were going to do things. We have ministers of state who declared Afghanistan if elections do not go into their favor. We have a national organizer of their party who had made comments to the effect that people should carry, pistols to the polling stations when they are going to vote, and all those things. And they are captured on tape. All these tapes, most of them, they have come out and said that these tapes were doctored, and it was not their voice. Nobody arrested anybody. Nobody prosecuted anybody. I recall the famous one, the declaration of war by Kennedy Jafon, and how it turned out in this country. We have never seen anything of this sort. This can only be classified as unbridled political.
But you cite this example. Your party, your government put Kennedy Jafon before court and charged him with treason, high treason.
If you look at the enormous nature of that incident and you compare it to this one, in fact, there is absolutely no basis, and the individual had admitted that this is a doctored tape, this is not my voice. So why do you proceed to this level? It can only amount to political persecution for a whole attorney general to come in this morning, leading this frivolous and weak charges that have been preferred against our national chairman and deputy.
But Mr. Tokuno, but why don't you allow the court? Why don't you allow the AG is not the judge? Why don't you allow the judge, having looked at the evidence you say is weak, come to its own conclusion, pronounce a verdict that vindicates your national chairman?
Well, Evans, nobody can restrict the judge from proceeding on the case, but nobody can also restrict us from sharing our opinion on what we think the government is doing. Clearly, this is a diversionary tactic. People are struggling in this country. The economy is in tatters. There is economic quagmire, and the government will not focus on fixing the troubles that bedevil the people of this country. And they would resort to this kind of cheap political goal scoring.
Do you have faith? Do you have faith in the judicial system to honestly and faithfully deal with this matter?
That is another matter for another day. And because one may raise contempt, that is not something that we will be discussing at this point. But what we can say.
So you can't tell me if you have faith in the system.
This government is clearly pursuing an agenda that is not healthy for our democracy. Gone are the days, gone are the dark old days when the free speech, was a scarce commodity. Now free speech cannot be a scarce commodity, but this government is making free speech a scarce commodity. They want to use the court and the police to intimidate our people.
You're saying that you're now saying that this government is using the court to intimidate your people. That is calling the court's integrity into question.
Evans, it is your own opinion, but let me make this point. The NPP cannot and will not test us to failure in our resolve to defend the democracy and the principles of the fundamental human rights and freedom of the people of this country. We would always stand tall because, mind you, as I have always said, we have fathered the modern democracy that we are enjoying today. And we will do anything within the laws to protect, defend that kind of democracy that we have built.
I'm grateful that you joined us. That is Otokuno Dehi, is the Deputy General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress.
It's time to experience something different, unexpected, and definitely beyond banking. It's a new era at GCB Bank, Ghana's most welcoming bank, where we